Hi, we're Group 6 and we'll be discussing spinal cord stimulation for the treatment of chronic pain. So what is neuromodulation? Well, the International Neuromodulation Society defines neuromodulation as a broad array of treatments, both electrical and chemical, targeting a variety of locations in the body to best achieve a desired outcome. In terms of chronic pain, there are multiple therapies within neuromodulation. One is spinal cord stimulation, which we'll be talking about. There's also deep brain stimulation, among other sorts of stimulation, including motor cortex, cerebral, sacral, peripheral nerve, and trigeminal nerve stimulation. The indications for spinal cord stimulation include chronic neuropathic pain that has failed to respond to at least 6 months of conservative treatment. This may include failed back surgery syndrome, which is also known as lumbar post-laminectomy syndrome, complex regional pain syndrome, peripheral neuropathy, and ischemic limb pain. The left picture depicts the percutaneous leads with the electrode arrays that are placed dorsally in the epidural space, and the right picture shows an example of an IPG or internal pulse generator and battery combination device. Prior to permanent implantation of a spinal cord stimulator device, the patient has to undergo a spinal cord stimulator trial. This is a picture depicting what the spinal cord stimulator trial entails. Essentially, a practitioner will place 2 needles into the epidural space and deliver 2 electrodes through those needles. The patient will then go home with the temporary device for a week. A successful trial is defined as at least 50% improvement in pain and/or functionality in the patient. In terms of market segmentation for spinal cord stimulation, there's various uses. Again, it's used for any neuropathic pain condition unresponsive to conservative measures. There's various device types within the leads and hardware. The spinal cord stimulator leads can be either 1 or 2 placed in the epidural space. There can be percutaneous leads, which are placed through the skin, or paddle leads, which are surgically implanted with laminotomy required. There's dorsal column stimulation and dorsal root ganglion stimulation. There's 4 lead contacts, 8 lead contacts, 12 lead contacts, 16 and 32 contact paddle leads. There are combination battery and IPG, internal pulse generators, which can be either non-rechargeable or rechargeable. And there are MRI conditional and non-MRI conditional hardware. In terms of the major companies, there's Medtronic, which provides dorsal column stimulation. It also has the smallest IPG and battery. Abbott Neuromodulation, which provides DRG and their novel therapy Burst DR. Nevrotherapy, which is dorsal column stimulator as well, which has HF10 therapy, has a patent on frequencies of 1.5 kilohertz to 100 kilohertz. There's Boston Scientific Therapy, which also has just dorsal column stimulation. Nalu, which has the smallest IPG, and their power source is externally worn, so you have no large battery implanted. And StimWave, where there's no IPG required. There's an external wearable external pulse generator and a transferably placed DRG. Now Bill will talk about market forces in spinal cord stimulation.
Thanks, Sarav. In evaluating the market size, we'll look at the 2 major indications for these procedures, intractable low back and leg pain, as well as failed back surgery syndrome. In terms of low back pain, 16 million U.S. adults suffer from chronic back pain. This constitutes $34 billion annually for treatment and over $100 billion annually in lost productivity. Of these 16 million U.S. adults, anywhere from 5 to 55% of chronic back pain is neuropathic. And of those, 40 to 50% are without effective pain relief. This leads to a wide spectrum of potential U.S. market for patients with chronic back pain that is neuropathic and without relief of somewhere between 320,000 to upwards of 4.4 million. Should spinal cord stimulators capture 15% of this market, that would be an annual U.S. market of between 48,000 and 660,000 individuals. At an average device cost of $19,000, this would be a value of $912 million to $12.5 billion a year just in the United States. In terms of the failed back surgery syndrome, spinal fusions in the United States have more than doubled over the last 20 years. There are now 1.62 million instrumented spinal procedures a year in the United States, and of these, 500,000 surgeries are for back pain. It is estimated that anywhere from 10 to 40% of these surgeries result in failed back surgery syndrome. This leads to an annual U.S. market for failed back surgery of somewhere between 50 and 200,000 patients. With a 25% penetration into this market, again, higher than when you see in the low back pain, but a reasonable estimate, there would be 12.5 to 50,000 patients a year in this marketplace, with a value of between $237 million and $950 million a year. As you can see, there are approximately 50,000 spinal cord stimulators placed annually in the United States, so it's clearly a market with a lot of growth potential. Looking at the market players, we see that Medtronic captures the largest market share of the spinal cord stimulator market with a 38% share with its portfolio of stimulators. Medtronic reported revenues in this sector of $873 million in 2019 and $761 million in 2020, reflecting a COVID-driven decline in procedures. Abbott Labs holds a 22.5% market share with its product line and global revenues of $702 million in 2020 versus $831 million in 2019. Boston Scientific holds a 21.1% market share with its devices including Precision and the Spectra WaveWriter series. Nevro, with its proprietary high-frequency HF10 devices, holds a 15.4% market share with a reported $362 million in 2020 global sales. Smaller competitors, Nalu and Stimware, comprise only about 3% of the market. Looking at the global financial trends in this market, we see that global revenues in 2020 are $2.2 billion, the lion's share of this being in North America, and particularly the American market. This is driven by both patient awareness, access to specialists who can provide the care, and standardized medical codes for billing. Projecting ahead, we can see slow but steady growth in the North American market with an annual growth rate of about 2.7% between 2020 and 2026, with the largest growth expected in Asia. Although small at this time, this growth is being driven primarily in China and India due to unmet need, growing healthcare expenditures, and patient awareness. I'll now turn it over to Nina, who will discuss patient and stakeholder analysis.
Hi, I'm Nina. I'll discuss the stakeholders. The primary stakeholders are patients, unsurprisingly. Per each patient's pathology, SCS could influence or even determine quality of life. SCS may reduce a patient's need to consider experimental treatment. It may reduce the overall cost of care. Also, it may reduce stress experienced by patients, their loved ones, caregivers, etc. Next slide. The secondary stakeholders are hospitals and other caregiving firms. These entities have to gain or lose credibility, reputation, and revenue from SCS treatment and corresponding patient outcomes. The tertiary stakeholders are providers. Similarly, providers have to gain or lose credibility, reputation, and revenue from treatment and corresponding outcomes. For both caregiving firms and providers, effective SCS reasonably yields improved patient outcomes. And that wraps up our stakeholder analysis.
Hello, once again, my name is Sunita and I'll be presenting to you the non-market forces affecting the neuromodulators medical device market. So what are non-market forces? These are institutions within the society or organizations including economic, regulatory bodies, political, social, cultural, which affects the market. So we all know that neuromodulators play a major role in the fight to end the opioid epidemic. So one regulatory body, which is the FDA, has actually approved for its use for pain management. Also, other socioeconomic factors, including healthcare disparities, has affected the use of neuromodulators. This is because the issues of high cost of care has caused disproportionate application of the devices in demographics with varied financial resources. The U.S. cost control measure to limit healthcare expenditure also potentially creates disparities in assessing neuromodulators due to different insurance approval, so be it private insurance versus government assistance versus uninsured. Also, the varying regulatory or approval policies between the FDA in the US and the European Commission also affect the neuromodulators market. We also have the high market growth driven by large population, new products, and tech innovations. So neuromodulators are now not only being used for chronic back pain. The FDA has also approved other medical devices known as the portable neuromodulation stimulator to improve gait and multiple sclerosis. So as you can see here, the population needing the use of neuromodulators is growing, and that has caused the expansion of the market. Also, the global pandemic, which is COVID-19, negatively impacted the innovators and the market. There was pressure to produce increasingly complex products quicker and at a lower cost. The market has also become highly competitive due to increase in smart manufacturing, innovation, and process enhancement. Now, I'd like to hand it over to Caitlin to talk about the market trends. Thank you.
So there have been several notable market trends for spinal cord stimulators. One of those includes the device's compatibility with diagnostic testing. In previous years, a key concern for patients with a stimulator was that getting an MRI presented very high risk. There's potential for the electrical currents to be activated and distribute an unnecessary shock. Well, now almost all the major companies have a product that allows patients to have a safe, low-risk MRI. Also, the battery of the stimulator also continues to advance. There are non-rechargeable devices that typically need to be surgically replaced every 2 to 5 years, but now the option is available to receive a chargeable device, which then increases the battery life to 10 years or longer. Medtronic actually has a device, I believe, that offers an 11-year battery life. And then, of course, with most medical devices, the size of the implantable pulse generator has decreased over time. For example, Medtronic has the Intellis device that measures 2.2 by 1.9 inches and only weighs 1 ounce. And if you compare that to their model they implemented in 2006, you can see the progress considering that device weighed, I think, 2.5 ounces. So all the factors in combination with insurance coverage approval has increased the acceptance from physicians and patients, which inevitably has allowed stimulators to gain popularity in patient treatment plans. So to conclude our brief industry analysis, we do project a lot of market growth. There are continuous advances in technology, consumer awareness has increased. The fact that this is a non-opioid pain option is very attractive to stakeholders and practitioners. And then, of course, the overall improved quality for patients, improved quality of life for patients is a prioritized goal. Thank you so much for your time, and here are some additional references.